I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Bouncing Back. Not too long ago, the advent of HIV sparked a significant and serious national conversation. The disease, which causes AIDS, was one of the most feared and talked about epidemics to strike the country in decades. Since the 1990s, however, treatments have improved so tremendously that people have gone from fear of dying of AIDS to the difficulties of living with HIV. While much of the panic has gone away, the disease has not. There are still new cases arising. There are still people whose loved ones are being infected. How can people confront and survive HIV? That's our focus on this edition of Bouncing Back. Let's get started. William Brawner is one of the country's best-known HIV/AIDS activists. Infected via transfusion as a toddler, William has dedicated his life to helping HIV-positive youth. William is the director of Community Advisory Board of UPenn Center for AIDS Research. He's the founder and executive director of Haven Youth Center Incorporated and is the director of Camp Bright Feathers. He is also the subject of award-winning documentary, 25 to Life. Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
This has really been a show of love for me. I've been doing a lot of research because I am a product of using words like HIV and AIDS interchangeably. Mm-hmm. So I thought what we might start out today's show is talk about what AIDS is and what HIV is so that we're all clear.
Okay, sure. HIV is the human immunodeficiency virus, keyword being virus. It is the virus that causes AIDS. Now, HIV is spread through a couple fluids, one of them being blood, semen, vaginal secretions, and what most people don't know, breast milk.
Oh, okay.
Unprotected sex with an infected partner, sharing needles with an infected partner. Blood transfusion, still not so much in America, but abroad. Mm-hmm. And I am missing one. Of course, mother to child.
Oh, okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
So you were infected as a toddler.
I was infected at 18 months. I was a victim of a blood transfusion, of child abuse. And I had to receive a blood transfusion. And the person who gave the blood was GRID positive.
Okay, can you explain what GRID?
Absolutely.
You threw that at me.
Yeah, I know, right.
Because you know that I didn't know what GRID.
You said you did your research.
Oh, I did research on you because I knew that you're so. I'm so impressed with you because you are. When I think about this show and why we do the show because people bounce back, overcome adversity, and we all have to overcome adversity. And you have taken something that's happened to you and you've made it your passion, your life dream, and you're giving back to people every single day. So I did my research on you.
Okay.
So let's get back to GRID.
GRID. So before HIV was actually called HIV,
okay,
it went through a whole list of names. One of them was the 4 H's, which was homosexuals, Haitians, hemophiliacs, and heroin abusers. Then we went to GRID, which was gay, retroviral, infectious disease. So when we celebrate 34, 35 years with HIV, or of HIV and AIDS, HIV and AIDS has really been around a lot longer, just under different names. So when I was first diagnosed in 1980.
So you were diagnosed when you were a toddler. Okay.
Yeah.
But when did you, obviously you're a toddler, no one told you were a toddler. How old were you when they did tell you? That is the one thing I didn't find.
No problem. My mother found out, so I got the blood transfusion, and my mother got a call from the doctors when I was 3 years old, and the person who had given the blood had died. She got a call that the gentleman had died, and I needed to come in to check to see if I had the same HIV antibodies that the gentleman who died had. So she found out when I was 3 years old. She told me when I was 5. And
can you imagine the fear that your mom had? Is your mom still alive?
Yeah, my mother is still alive, and she still carries it to this day. Yeah,
she must have felt a little like, in some ways, as a parent, when we take our child, we feel a little guilty. So I'm sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you, but I just, as a mother, I can only imagine, hear your son go, take him to the hospital, they get a transfusion, and now you're 5.
5.
Bring us to that day. Do you really remember being 5 and being told?
Yes.
Wow, that's...
Yes, I remember it like it was yesterday. We were on the way to 52nd and Market, and 52nd and Market 30 years ago was one of my favorite spots, and it actually still is to this day. It's a strip in West Philly where they have a lot of vendors, a lot of food, a lot of fun, and you can get things for cheaper. So she took me there, and back then it was a Woolworths.
Oh my God, I love Woolworths.
Right.
All right, well, we could talk and do a whole show about Woolworths and Corvettes, but we won't.
Listen, they had some great chicken wings. But anyway, she took me to Woolworths, and we parked behind the Woolworths in the Woolworths parking lot. And she told me that as a result of a blood transfusion, which I didn't know anything about, that I had received blood and that I had to start taking a lot of medication. And she said, you can't tell anybody about this medication because if people knew that you had, and at the time we just called everything AIDS, if people knew that you had AIDS, they might try to do mean things to you and to our family. And this was 1983, and there were the first HIV/AIDS drugs weren't approved until 85.
Okay.
So I was actually in clinical trials to see how much of an adult dose a child could take at this time.
Wow. So you're sitting there with your mom. She tells you at the age of 5 that you now have to take all this medication. Do you remember starting to take the medication? Did you ever tell anybody? Like, did you tell a friend? Did you confide in somebody at that young age? Because, we're 5. We want people we want our friends. We hang out with our people.
I didn't. We have so many family secrets. Like, this was just another one.
Oh, you do?
Oh, we have plenty. That's a whole nother show. But yeah, we had plenty of family secrets, like most families, and this was just one of them. So Mom says, don't say anything to anybody, no big deal. And I didn't really understand.
What kind of medication was it? Was it pills? Like, did you?
It was pills.
So you had to sit there physically take how many pills a day? Do you remember?
Then it was only 2.
Oh,
it was AZT.
So it's really, at that point, it was like no big deal to you. You're just like, I'm taking 2 pills a day. Did you grasp it at 5?
I didn't grasp it at 5, but digesting, swallowing pills
at 5 is
at
tough.
5 is tough.
Yep.
I
have an 11-year-old. He still can't take pills. So
it was, and the AZT had to be taken, I believe, 3 times a day.
So that's tough.
So it was very tough. But I got used to it. But it took a lot for me to get used to.
Right. Did you ever ask yourself, like, why did this happen to me? Or, like, at what point? So you're 5, and then I know you went to Howard University, right? Where that seems where it was maybe the pivotal point of your activism, would you say? Or tell us about
activism? No. I was very active. But
right.
no.
I did read that you were a little sexually active at Howard, and that you had, it's interesting, we talked, you and I, about how people tend to behave in certain ways just because they need to validate themselves, right? And so I think, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how we want to look at it, but college campus is the time that we try to validate ourselves sexually. So now here you are at Howard, and tell us the rest of your story.
So I was at Howard University, and it was a Friday night in April. And I'm coming home from work on a Friday night, about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And there's a note on my door from the president of the university. And the note says to call my office ASAP, president of the university.
Right.
So immediately I call my family. I'm like, Mom, what's going on? Is my bill paid? Did anybody die? Why does the president want to speak with me?
Right, that's pretty serious.
She tells me, bill's paid, everybody's fine, you're safe, give the man a call. So I called him, and he tells me on a Friday night that this is not a matter that we can discuss over the phone, and you need to be in my office tomorrow being Saturday.
Right.
So my mind is racing, like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? What's going on?
At that point, I would have called my mother and told her to come to campus.
I was trying to be a big boy, and I've already talked to her. She said there was nothing wrong, so I didn't think that I was going to be hit with me walking into his office on a Saturday morning and him sliding an email to me. He printed out an email and he slid this email across his desk, and the email said, Bill Brawner is HIV positive, and he is infecting everyone in the school. Yeah, this came from my ex-girlfriend, who at the time was the only person I'd ever been with and disclosed to.
Wow, on so many levels that had to be just life-changing at that very point.
Yeah, words cannot describe all of the emotions that were going through my body. Fear, confusion, betrayal, anger, frustration.
And it was the first person that you told.
First and only person I had ever told at that time. And the level of betrayal, I just can't even put into words, because this was my deepest, most intimate secret that had been exposed to the president of the school.
Right. So what did he say next? He handed you the email?
He handed me the email. He didn't ask me was it true or false. He just said he needed to ensure that this email wasn't sent from anyone in the university, because if it was, then he would have to take further actions, not knowing what they were. But I knew who it was sent from, and I know she didn't go to my school.
Right.
But she caused a lot of damage to me at that time. Now, I'm not blaming her for anything that I did as a result of it, but while you're in college, like you said, you're trying to form who you are, and it was hard enough being from Philly, going to school in D.C., trying to just figure that out, not feeling like you're smart enough to be there anyway. But then you add HIV and the betrayal on top of it, it really shook me up.
I can't even imagine. So now you're sitting in the president's office.
Yeah.
You end the conversation, you get up. What's the next thing you do? You walk out the door, you call your family and say, this is the situation.
Yeah. Go to home, break down.
I can't even imagine how you felt. Like you just, and the one, that's hard when we confide. Again, on college campuses, we look to form relationships and trust. And so now your trust was betrayed, and so to speak, your secret was out. What did you do? Did you stay in Howard?
Yeah.
Okay.
I stayed. I went home, broke down everything, any HIV/AIDS paraphernalia that I had, any pill that I had, threw it away immediately. Yes. Didn't know what she was going to do next.
Okay.
And this is, 99. So email and internet was just becoming a hot thing at this time. And, I didn't know if she was going to come to my campus with posters or billboard. I didn't know what she was going to do. So my thing was, if she came to campus, there would be nothing to show that I was HIV positive, not even my actions. So if it ever got out, or if she ever decided to do anything, no one would believe her because of who I was and how I was.
Right.
And as a result of that, I made some bad decisions. I partied too much.
So a result of that, then you went into the spiral of partying too much. But you, at that point, I just want to make sure that I'm clear and everybody's clear, is that you were only HIV positive, right?
No, I've had an AIDS diagnosis.
Okay.
For, at that time, I would say for about 10 years. And the difference between the HIV diagnosis and the AIDS diagnosis is this. HIV, like I said, is a virus that causes AIDS. So there's two ways to get AIDS from HIV. You have a regular person, I hate the word regular person, but someone who's not HIV positive or have any other type of chronic infection.
Well, so why don't we just call that person the healthy life?
Right.
Something.
A healthy person.
The healthy.
A healthy person will have between 800 and 1,200 CD4 cells, T cells, which are cells that protect you from sickness or infection.
Okay.
So if you get a cold, these helper cells are going to keep you from getting pneumonia.
Okay.
Someone with an AIDS diagnosis goes below 200 T cells or CD4 cells. In addition to that, someone with an AIDS diagnosis goes below those 200 and has something called an opportunistic infection, meaning they have an additional sickness which came upon as a result of them having less of an immune system. So that could be shingles, which is another form of chickenpox. That could be thrush in your mouth. That could be a long list of additional infections that would come along with, or that would allow you to have an AIDS diagnosis. So I had an AIDS diagnosis earlier in my life. Once an AIDS diagnosis, always an AIDS diagnosis.
Okay. What would you say to a student? I mean, one of the reasons we're doing the show is because we want to talk about it and we want people to see that you bounce back and how great you are. Just excited that you're
I'm
here.
all
Well, we'll do a whole show about that another day. But what would you say to the student that says, well, why should I get tested? Because we're on a college campus right now, and wouldn't it be a perfect world that they're all having safe sex? But sometimes it's not a perfect world, as we know. And so, what advice would you give to somebody that says, well, why should I get tested? I don't feel sick. I'm perfectly fine.
Right. No, I would understand it. But at the same time, I would say it's very important to get tested for a number of reasons. The number one reason is most people who get sick with an HIV or AIDS diagnosis is because they didn't get tested early enough. So the earlier you get tested, the more medications you have at your disposal, the less likely you are to become sick. 1. 2, you can literally be tested within a minute. We have rapid HIV testing, something called an Insta-test, where we can test you and give you your results literally in less than 60 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's really no excuse.
There is no excuse.
Nobody can say I don't have time on campus to get tested, right?
Exactly.
So, I think it's interesting that you're doing all this. You're the executive director of Haven Youth Center. Tell us about that and what it is your goal is and mission for that.
Haven Youth Center is the program that I envisioned when I was about 12 to 13 years old, going through side effects of different medications. I would be laying in my room wishing that there was someone to talk to about what was happening, and because of certain stigmas and because of certain stereotypes, there was really no one. So I laid in silence. I suffered in silence. Haven was a program that I envisioned at that time that would help kids like me. So what I've essentially tried to become is the role model that I wish I was able to have. Through this program, we have a camp called Camp Bright Feathers, which is a program for HIV-infected and affected youth. We serve over 100 kids between the ages of 3 to 18 years old. We have 40 volunteers and 3 full-time nurses who stay on campus 24/7. We also have an HIV testing program where we tested about 350 people last year. We have a hepatitis program. We also have a program called Daddy's First, where we work with single fathers to become better fathers through social support and different socialization skills like play, learning how to play with your children around other dads to support each other. And last but definitely not least, we have HIV support groups for those infected and affected.
Well, that's so admirable because you really have made it your life's, work.
Thank you.
Tell us about, we have to wrap it up in a few minutes, but I'd like to really get it out there that you have a documentary out called 25 to Life, and I couldn't find it on the internet, but could you tell me where it is?
Secret. We just had a conversation about that.
Is it hidden somewhere?
It is, actually. It's in a vault. No, we have a documentary called 25 to Life, and the documentary is about my life, and it talks about basically everything I just talked to you about, with the disclosure and the diagnosis and the stigma and discrimination and relationships and so forth and so on. But the documentary has actually won a number of awards from different festivals all throughout New York and the rest of the country. And our distributor is also the director of the movie Selma, Ava DuVernay.
Oh, I can't wait to see that.
She's our distributor. So we're in very good company. We are supposed to be doing an educational release sometime in March. We're working on an actual tour. And we have a deal with Netflix. So in June or July, the documentary will actually be on Netflix.
Wow, that's just congratulations.
Thank you.
You know what? We were talking earlier before we started the show that, whether you have HIV or we all feel we have a secret, something to hide. Mm-hmm. What piece of advice would you give to somebody that feels embarrassed or ashamed and they really want to get their secret out?
Yeah.
Because it had to be hard for you.
Yeah. It still is hard. Every time I tell this story, it's like I'm doing it the first time. So, I get the secret. I get, suffering and silence. I think one of the most powerful things in releasing yourself and telling your secret is that you're able to be your authentic self. Most of the times people allow what has happened to them to determine what's going to happen to them in the future. So we're pretty much being held up by our past. But once you release that, you get to be who you are. You get to have all your potential out into the universe and get to become your best authentic person. There's a timing.
I love that. Can I hug you?
Of course you
We're
can.
going to tell people all the time.
Thank you.
Be your authentic self.
Yeah.
That's so critical to be yourself and
Yeah.
use this time while you're on college campus to be yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being our guest on our show
Thank you.
today. It's
Thanks for having
absolutely
me.
a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Living with HIV in your life can be challenging and confusing, but it doesn't have to be a barrier to achieving your goals. People with HIV can have long and successful careers, achieve fame, fall in love, and have families. If someone you know or a loved one is diagnosed, understand that they're the same person, and it's important for you to stand by them in this difficult phase in their life. They can bounce back from this, but they shouldn't have to do it alone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you here again on Bouncing Back.